You're listening to the Best Advice Podcast, guys. If you haven't already, give us a 5-star review and help spread the word. And if you have a question for the guys, email a voice recording to podcast@bestadvicepodcastguys.com. That's podcast@bestadvicepodcastguys.com. Today's episode is brought to you by Security Financial Management. If you're ready to level up your financial game, SFM offers a free initial consultation after each episode. Just send an email to podcast@bestadvicepodcastguys.com with the subject line complimentary consultation to book yours today.
Welcome back to Best Advice Podcast, guys. I'm your host, Rob Lavalio, here as always with Austin Fats Jacks, Frank Lavalio, and Mitchell Walk. Gentlemen, what's crack-a-lacky?
There we are, starting it out. We've got quite a team today. Dave's out. He's got some big business going on today, but we always love having Austin here with us. He's got the information.
He does, but we got to have our young stallion with all the good cutting-edge data, and he's got it today. I feel it.
Let's do it. I feel good about it.
Me too.
So, per usual, we like to start each episode with a powerful practice of positive thinking. We like to call this segment, Give Me Something Good. So, Fats, give me something good.
Something good. All right. Well, happy Memorial Day weekend. How fortunate are we living in this country? I think it's the best country in the world. Some might disagree, but I think it's the best.
It is.
You know, a lot of men and women sacrifice their lives so that we could be free and have this life. So happy Memorial Day weekend. I don't know how it turned out that you just eat a bunch of hot dogs and drink a bunch of beer, but I plan to celebrate this weekend.
That's a good way to go.
Yeah,
I plan to have a couple beers for it. Why not?
No, it's easy to kind of just think about the fun, but great point, Austin. You know, I didn't have anybody in my immediate family serve, but my father-in-law, Dean Robert, who I had a lot of respect for, fought in World War II. And so, you know, thank you for saying that. So here's to, you know, all those that served and sacrificed their lives and their families' lives so we have freedom. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was a good point. My family, immediate family, my father, 4 or 5, 6 uncles were in World War II, and another uncle was in the Korean War. So, yeah, I've got a lot of family history, but that's why we're here today free.
That's right. That's a lot of sacrifice for our freedom.
Love to hear it. So we're going to go right into it today, guys, with the question of the day. Today's question comes from Nate from Chicago. Nate, what you got for us?
You want to say something?
Hey guys, Nate from Chicago writes in, you hear a lot of different theories on withdrawing money from a retirement portfolio. What do the experts at Security Financial Management think about this?
All right. Thank you, Nate. Once again, I don't have much for you guys today. Let's leave it to the experts. Who wants to start this off?
I always like starting, and I'll let the our young expert and our older expert, not old, older expert kind of tie in. But I wanted to start with, before we get into some of the strategies that these gentlemen will do, is just to make sure that when you're doing a distribution from your retirement, and we've all had thousands of meetings in this expert panel, but what resonates with me is a few things. Number one is you got to look at all your sources of income. So if you have typical is a 401k, right? Because that's one of the biggest wealth builders of all the people in America. It's a forced savings plan. There's millions and millions of 401k millionaires that just grinded it out for 30 years. And at the end of 30 years, their balances have really blossomed. And that's obviously one way. And you got to pull money from that. The other thing that we've mentioned is make sure if you're younger, look at a Roth IRA, because when you look at your sources of income, think about this. You know, you have X amount of bills, and then you want to have X amount of income when you retire. And the sources of where you get that money from are important. So we mentioned the 401k. That's going to be qualified money. You pay pre-tax, or you're going to pay ordinary income tax on the way out. So to make that simple, let's just make it a nice, easy, fun, round $1 million. That's really only about $700,000 to $750,000 of real spendable dollars, right? And so that million, let's call it 750. So if you have a Roth or other after-tax brokerage accounts, we always encourage clients, obviously that's a great tool, the 401k, but make sure you have other deposits going into things that are after-tax, because those dollars are more like $1 in, probably $1 back out. There'll be taxes only on gains, but not on your principal. What do you say to that, Mitch?
Well, the Roth is important. And, what it's called a lot of times we look at, it's called the 4% rule. And what is the 4% rule? The 4% rule on a typical 60-40 portfolio means that you should be safe. And I say the word should. It's worked for a very long time. But again, nothing's guaranteed. But it should be safe that you can pull out 4% of your value of your portfolio and live a long time on that and be safe. But again, always, I recommend, as well as you do, if you can add money to things like a Roth after tax, it will grow and grow and grow, and you won't pay tax on it when money comes out. And it's worth even more than $1, because if it's over the long run, you should have some growth on that money and not pay tax on it. It's a good point. Austin?
Good. Absolutely. I mean, we always talk about the 4% rule, and that's kind of a general rule of thumb. And like you said, everybody's situation is a little bit different. There's other strategies, like, for instance, income only, right? And it depends on what your expenses are, but between Social Security and then income that is generated from your investments, like stocks, bonds, paying dividends, if you're able to keep your expenses to the amount that is generated in income from your portfolio, then you're never really selling anything to create a cash flow for your lifestyle. So an income only is a much more conservative approach if you're worried about, preservation of principal and leaving money to your heir. So income only is another one.
Are there vehicles for inflation? Like how does that account for inflation? Like how would you plan for that?
So for planning for inflation, that's why having exposure to equities is pretty important. Equities tend to outpace bonds or fixed income over a period of time. And then at some point down the road, you might have to sell some equities to meet your cash flow. But having equity exposure, I think, is very important for fighting inflation.
Also, to add to that, there's some really good annuity programs right now when it's appropriate for the right person, if they have the cash flow and the net worth to be able to have a sustainable longer term for a piece of their portfolio. 20-30% of a portfolio, depending on that client and their individual circumstances. There's some really nice guaranteed programs that can guarantee and kind of supplement either your pension or your Social Security. So again, sources of income, I'll come back to that. You get Social Security, you've got 401k, you've got after-tax accounts, you've got Roth IRAs for when it's appropriate, a guaranteed annuity strategy. So you got all these streams of income coming in. And really the key, and we've seen this as advisors, it's really how you set up your lifestyle from an expense standpoint. We have some clients that come in with multiple millions of dollars, and they're tight. And then we have people that, have worked their whole life and they've accumulated, a smaller amount of money. And they're like, hey, I'm going golf this weekend. I can't wait to, go to the Bahamas. We're flying. And they just seem very free. And a lot of that is keeping your fixed expenses to a minimum.
Absolutely.
And that's what it is. Every single person is different. And that's, again, a reason really to work with a financial advisor, because there's so many variables that are out there. There's so many things that can happen. As you said, Frank, you can have millions of dollars, but spend like you have more than those millions.
and millions plus
and be in trouble.
That's right.
Or you could have a great nest egg for yourself, have a nice lifestyle, and be very comfortable the rest of your life. So that's one of the things. In addition to that, the other question, Rob, I think you had was, right now is also a good time to also add or look at municipal bonds. Interest rates are high. If you're able to buy individual municipal bonds, those are tax-free from federal income tax. Depending on the state you live in, you might have some state income tax on it if you don't have that state's muni bonds. But they are a pretty good vehicle to lower, or even in some cases, like in Florida, limit your taxes to zero on municipal bonds. Rates are high now. You can lock them in for a number of years, and that's another vehicle. But to your point, you do need some equities because there's inflation. We've seen it high right now. Over in the long run, it hasn't been anywhere near this high. on average, but equities are also an important part of your portfolio, and you've got to find the right mix for the dollars you have, your lifestyle,
Right.
your expenses. So you really can sit down and try to figure that out with an advisor. We have lots of programs. We run those Monte Carlo systems and
all the different
programs,
thousands of
and
scenarios.
it gives you, the ideas of what to do, and that's an important part of this whole mix.
Yeah, I wanted to turn something over to Austin just because it's fun to talk about, and then I'll put him on the spot because that's fun too. The market, the market's been sort of rallying. What has been sort of the reason you think that we've had a little more fun the last this month than we did in April?
I think it's been weird kind of because it seems like bad news is good news for this
Yeah,
market, right?
yeah.
Like jobs come in a little bit weaker. Inflation, it's been a little bit higher. That's good news that it's going down, but the market is very anticipatory.
Mm-hmm.
And when there's uncertainty and some news comes out that maybe creates a little bit more certainty, it tends to gain its footing and kind of rebound a little bit.
Yeah, that's true. That's exactly right. Yeah, inflation's a little lower.
Right.
People like that, and then I did a show by myself because y'all were out of town, and Robert and I did one. Great show, by the way, Rob. And I'm just teasing you guys, but we talked a little bit about jobs report, right? So the jobs report was soft, and I was saying, well, that's good. So less jobs and lower wage growth, that's good. It's like Rob's like after the show, he's like, why is that good? I'm like, well, bad is good. He's like, forget it.
Right
That's
now,
why I'm hosting, and that's why I'm hosting.
right now, that's the only thing bad, and I talk about it all the time like you are now. The only thing that's going to get the Fed to lower these interest rates is bad news, which again is shocking.
But not too bad, right? They want
No.
they like earnings. They like earnings to be good,
Right.
Because then corporations are making money. So if it's all bad, earnings are down and we have slow wages. That's bad.
Right.
You have to have bad good.
You have to have bad good. Well, and to your point, in March it was 303,000 jobs.
Right.
Market didn't like that
Right.
much. And then in April it was 175. And, we just saw the unemployment tick up from around 3.7 to 3.9. They were excited because
that's good.
unemployment went up.
Yeah.
Right.
And if you remember the first week of April, after a tremendous first week of April, the market really tanked because inflation went up a tenth. I mean, CPI inflation went up 1/10 of a percent. And it caused the market to drop on average about 5.5% for the month of April.
And the reverse is true. It went down a tenth, and the market loved that last week, right?
Well, for the month of May, it's
Right.
made up almost that entire 5.5% in the first 2 weeks.
And some, right? NASDAQ record high, gold record high.
Dow touched on 40,000 this week.
April showers bring May flowers.
Right,
That's poetic.
I have to tell you, he's been waiting for that for weeks.
He said, I saw his notes. He had that.
No, I didn't. Came right off the cuff.
Everyone knows Fats is modest for a local legend.
Well, that is good.
One minute with Mitch.
Thank you. We already touched on a lot of the good news, the bad news, the record highs. Today, which is actually we're recording this on May 21st. 2024. Lots of things came out this morning. Lowe's came out and beat their estimates. Microsoft is now going all in on AI.
Yeah, they had their little conference.
They had their
or something,
conference all in on AI, and we know what has driven the market in that first quarter was AI. That's all we heard about from everybody. Inflation in Canada, just north of the border, has really dropped significantly.
Oh, wow.
Numbers from Canada came out this morning. Their inflation numbers are down at 2.7.
Wow.
So, they're almost 1% or 1% better than us. So it is possible.
Huh. That's good.
The markets
good, eh?
what's that?
Said pretty good, eh?
Yes,
Yeah,
it is.
pretty good, eh?
Pretty good, eh?
Hockey pucks prices went down. That's
Yeah.
what it was. And as we know, inflation has gone down there, and the markets are near record highs. This week, the Dow did touch a little over 40,000.
Yeah.
That's good. But you know what's interesting? What I like to see, I don't like to see the up 400, 500, 300, down 300.
it's more
What we've
steadiness.
seen, it's a broad base,
Yeah, I
but
like
what we've
that.
seen is maybe up 0.2%,
Yeah.
up 0.3%.
That feels sustainable.
It's sustainable
Yeah.
and healthy. When you don't see the 1.5% up and the 1% down, there are lots of swings. So that's also been a good thing. Oil is continuing its free fall. This morning, again, May 21st, according to Bloomberg, oil's dropped $1.10 a barrel, or 1.38% today alone, putting it around $78.70. So that's good. You know, they had some expectations in the Middle East when issues, Israel and Iran, the attacks were going on. They thought things might get out of control. Good thing that it didn't.
Yeah, looks like it.
But oil spiked up. And then that was a quick 3 days or so, and oil has continued to drop down. Fed Governor Waller, this is really important, and I'll wrap it up here. He's the Fed governor from San Francisco, and what he said is the recent data shows that that the economy is slowing, and the markets like that. And by him coming out with that statement, it's a positive that the Fed is not going to probably raise rates because that's been back again. People have been talking about raises. What's probably going to happen is hopefully, I think maybe in September, we might see a quarter cut possibly because the numbers are coming down. Consumer credit is getting very high on their credit cards, but they are still spending. They are still spending their money. So that'll give you a quick wrap up with a Minute with Mitch this morning. We've touched on everything, but I'll finish right there.
Thank you, Mitch. Thank you, Mitch. Remember, folks, the secret to wealth is not what you earn, it's what you keep. Happy days, everybody.
This podcast is for entertainment and educational purposes only and is not intended as personal financial advice. Before making any financial decision, please do your own research and consult a financial advisor as needed. If you have a question for the guys, email podcast@bestadvicepodcastguys.com.